Hi everyone, how are you doing after your big lunch? I hope not everyone's going to be asleep right now. And thanks very much for stopping by to hear me talk about what we actually do. I just realised I haven't got my clicker, which is here. Okay. So I'm here today to talk to you about different testing challenges that some of our customers have faced as they've moved through their development life cycle. It's something that varies depending on what stage you're actually in. So we thought it would be an interesting topic to talk about and share with you today. So I'll start with a little bit about who we are and why we're so passionate about this kind of testing. And then I'll talk a little bit about the development life cycle as we define it. And then I'm going to do a couple of deep dives onto different services that we've found have helped people who are on that different stages, the different stages of the development journey. And I'll put some case studies in there as well for you to give it a little bit of context. And hopefully I'll have some time for questions at the end. Hopefully they won't kick me off. So this is a little bit about who we are if you've never heard of us before. We've been around for about 5 years. And our mission is to become the world's leading company for innovative testing services. We cut our teeth in the enterprise software testing market 5 years ago. And what we do is deliver functionality, quality assurance testing, and also usability testing. And we do that using our crowd and also some cloud technologies. So a couple of bits and pieces about our crowd. Right now we have over 150,000 people based in nearly 200 countries, and between them they own around about 400,000 physical devices. So we have quite a lot of scale. We track 60 different demographics on those users. So we can, the beauty of our crowd services are that we can put your product or app right in front of the people who are actually going to use it once it's released to market. And then if you're looking to test at scale, we have some cloud-based services which mean that you can do that easily and efficiently and on an ad hoc basis. So far, we've identified nearly over 110,000 bugs. So we're doing really well on the bug front. And then we have lots of people in our crowd, from professional QA testers to everyday people working in all kinds of different industries, stay-at-home moms, students, you name it. And this is why we exist, and these are the things that we want to help people with. So this image is a graphical representation of the different Android devices that are out there in the marketplace right now. It's probably a much bigger picture if you include everything that's out there. But what it does is it shows how fragmented this place is. And if you're a developer, it's a real challenge, because how can you possibly scale across all of these different devices? I mean, I know everyone has a cupboard with a few handsets in, but you're not going to be able to fit enough devices in that cupboard to really make sure that you're doing a good job and capturing everything you need to in terms of testing and quality. And that device diversity thing is a problem, even if you're just in the UK, for example. But once you look at scaling to other markets and you want to build and develop in more than one market, then this can become a much bigger issue. Because not only are you asking yourself, how do I make sure I capture all of the devices, but you're also asking yourself, how can I capture all of the devices in 4 different markets with 2 different languages and a number of different network providers? So it becomes a much more complex issue to try and handle. And then finally, we have this lovely slide with lots of different people on it, which always makes us chuckle internally. But what we're trying to say with this is that, 10 years ago, development was a very different place, and applications and services were really developed. They were done by developers for developers, and the end users just had to get on with it. But then along came the iPhone and everything changed, and now people are developing apps for everybody. So in order to make sure that your target audience is really satisfied with what you're about to launch, it's really important to put your product in front of them before it gets to market. And that's really why we exist, because we're able to provide those end users and that very, very focused testing and quality assurance before something releases. So now let's look a bit more at the development life cycle. Doesn't really matter what methodology you're working with, whether you're working in something iterative like Agile or something linear like Waterfall. Largely speaking, you're going to be following very consistent phases of development, right? So you start with your concept, where it can be just an idea, and then you move to creating a skeleton, something where you're just determining the navigation framework, like a wireframe, which is your kind of your prototyping phase. And then you start to put the meat and the muscle onto that structure and build out the content. And that's where all the magic happens, which is of course the development phase. And finally, as you're getting ready to get out there and release your product to market or your app to market, you're looking at the testing and releasing phases. And these are all extremely different phases, even though everybody needs to follow them. And each of them brings a different set of challenges in terms of quality assurance and functionality and usability testing. So what I want to do is I want to look at a couple of the different services that we offer and do a deep dive on 3 of them. So don't worry, I'm not going to go through all of these, but what I am going to take you through is a comparison study, also known as an A/B test, and I'm going to do a case study on that. I'm also going to take a look at 2 of our quality assurances together because I'm going to talk about automation testing. So that involves structured test case execution and also our cloud environment, Test Chameleon. So I'll talk a little bit about that in the second case study. And then finally, I'm going to move to our third bucket, which is kind of bespoke services that don't fit into either QA or UX. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit about a service called End-to-End Testing and how we've used that to help a client with some challenges that they were facing. Okay, so now we're looking at the beginning of the development lifecycle, the really, really early stages where you might have an idea or just a skeleton of a product or a service. And the challenges that a lot of people face at this stage is that they're not quite ready to get out there and invest in the development piece or putting the flesh onto the product, but it would be really nice for them to be able to quickly check in at an early stage that the product or the idea that they have is going to be appropriate for their target audience. And it would be nice to do this before you've invested in development efforts and resource, because then you could possibly save going down the wrong path in terms of how you develop the product in the future. And so I want to talk about a study called comparison study, also known as A/B testing. And it pretty much does what it says on the tin, in that you give users a limited number, normally 2 or 3 different versions of a product or a service, and get them to say which one they like the most. And the reason that I wanted to bring this one up to discuss and share a case study is because Snapchat have actually they've automated A/B testing in their programmatic advertising solution that launched last week, whereby a brand can, the system will automatically evaluate in an A/B testing style different creative executions to see which ones customers are responding to more, and then the advertising system will deliver that creative in favour of one that's not performing so well. So A/B testing is a really quick, focused way to evaluate usability feedback. And we used it really effectively in the prototyping stage with a sports industry customer quite recently. And what this person wanted to do, they wanted to redesign and relaunch their digital presence and their logo. But they'd come up with 3 different prototypes, and they were really, really struggling to know which one was going to appeal more to their end users. So that was what they came to us as a brief that they needed help with. So we were able to provide them with their very specific end user group. We actually took 50 testers, mostly males, between 20 and 45, sports enthusiasts with an annual income of over £45,000. And what we had them do was evaluate a number of the brand's key messages in the different prototype designs. So as I say, there were 3 of them. And then we asked the testers questions that were specific that related to these key messages to see how the testers would respond. And then the results were analysed and pulled together, and the key things were presented back to the client. What we delivered to the client in effect was one clear favourite. There was a really emphatic swing towards one of the different prototypes. It happened to be that it was green, and that was what the users felt was really well aligned to this particular brand. So that was the version, that was the prototype that the client went with. And so we'd hope that ensuring that the redesign was really aligned to the end customer would avoid any kind of costly mistakes down the line in terms of losing brand loyalty and things like that. Okay, so now we're moving on to the development phase where all the magic is happening and things are becoming more concrete, there's more content going into the app or the service. And one of the challenges that we find people face in this particular phase is being able to do continuous testing if they're trying to update an awful lot of functions and features, and this is something that can't be done manually. So, as I said, I'm going to talk about, one second, I've gone one slide too far, there we go. going to talk about test case execution, which is the service that we use in order to ensure functionality of some really key features within software or an application. And there's two ways we can do it. We can either get a targeted group of real users, so our crowd, with their own devices to go through structured test cases to find any bugs with that core functionality, or we can do it at scale via automation. And in order to do this, we would connect your continuous integration server to our cloud, and then our cloud would create however many virtual machines and simulated devices that you would need in order to execute that test at scale, perhaps overnight or something like that. So I'm hoping that I'm going to get a video now of how this actually looks. Excuse me? Video's not working. Sorry guys, talk amongst yourselves for a second. Yeah, this is the video slide. No? Okay, alright. Sorry guys, slight technical hitch. What I was going to present to you was an excellent film of an automated test script that we ran just for fun on Adidas's website. And what we actually did was write a test case that involved going and putting a pair of trainers into the shopping cart, and then we would try and put in some a fake address and some fake credit card information. Have you got it working? No? Okay. I'm going to keep going. It's fine. I'll keep going. So what we did, what you can see here is the Selenium, the test script that was written in Selenium, and within that we integrated some code that would mean that Jenkins, which is our own continuous integration system that we use, that Jenkins could talk directly to Test Chameleon through an API. And then what happened was we would take this particular test script, pop it into Selenium, have the test case start to run, and we instructed Test Chameleon to create two different virtual machines. One was a Mac and one was a Windows machine. But you can do this at scale with far many more machines than that. And what happens is Test Chameleon executes the automated tests, and then the results of those automated tests are passed back down the API into Jenkins. So effectively you come in the next morning and all of your test results will be there, so you can see where you had bugs and where you didn't. The video was much better. Sorry, appears to have stopped altogether. So, keep going down. And then this slide here. Sorry, I'm really not having a lot of luck today, am I? No, there's nothing you can do. Ah, here we go, okay. So let me move on to the test case here. So this is a study that we did with a banking client, and it was in their development phase. And the challenges that they were facing were that they wanted to execute automated testing at scale. And it was quite complex because they wanted to test in two different environments, a sealed-off staging environment and a production environment as well. And there are also a huge number of different browsers from IE8 right through to the latest version of Chrome. So that's something that would be very difficult to do from a complexity and a resource perspective. So what we ended up doing was, and this was a test that we did on their online banking product on a desktop. So what we did, we integrated via their own continuous integration server and the API connection into Test Chameleon on cloud. We were able to execute 450 different Selenium test cases overnight, and we actually tested on 10 different environments in parallel. So overnight we were running nearly 5,000 different test case executions. And then the reporting would come back through the following morning into their continuous integration system, and we also sent through the report via an email. And what we actually found was that the client was really pleased because they could go to market far more quickly, because they were able to test far more quickly and get results and do any bug fixes during the day, and then retest the following night, regression test the following night. And it meant that they were able to go to market far more quickly than they had been able to do with previous releases. So now we're on to the final stage of the development life cycle. So we're really talking about testing and release rather than development in this stage. But the problem that you tend to be facing when you get to release, especially when you look at the Internet of Things, is being able to not just test the app in isolation, but being able to test the end-to-end experience. And that's something that can be very, very tricky for people to validate, especially with a relevant target group. And so we have a study that we deliver. Okay, the slide's not going to go on. We have a service that we offer which is called an end-to-end test, and it allows you to do just that, which is basically take a connected product, it could be a toothbrush, it could be anything really, but something that has a connected aspect, put it in the hands of your end users, and then take it out into a real-life environment and test it for real, the whole experience. And so we actually did this in one of the world's largest electronics manufacturers quite recently, where they had a very complex, protracted test process that they wanted to run. And it was going to be extremely hard for them, A, to find a relevant target group in the market they were looking for, but also being able to keep testers motivated over a long period and a complex test process. So we were able to do that for them. We provided them with 50 parents with kids under 2 years old who only had iPhones. And the testing was actually executed over 4 weeks, which is quite a long time for a usability study to be done remotely. And testers would document all of their findings in a process every day. And then they also had to complete an extensive usability questionnaire. And the results for the client were very important because we identified a far higher number of bugs in the product than they had actually anticipated. And what they ended up doing was pushing their release date back so that they could fix those bugs and ultimately release a much better product to market with a higher quality of user experience and limit any damage to the customer brand, because that could have been a really difficult situation for them to manage. And I think that was my last slide. Yeah, so thank you very much for your time and for bearing with me through my technical issues that I've had. Do I have time for questions?
I think we...
If you don't, I will stand at the back and you can come and pepper me with questions if you like.
Have we got any burning questions from the audience? One question, where is your stand so they can come and talk to you?
C15, right, our stand. So it's basically at the far end of the main Disrupt stage.
Perfect. So Suzanne Holland, thank you very much indeed.
Thanks, guys.
So we're just